Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Debbie and I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is January 26 and 98. I'm very grateful to have a sobriety date. Welcome everybody to today's Threads of Recovery workshop. I've stated I'm an alcoholic. Do we have any other alcoholics in the meeting? Smile, wave, throw kisses, peace signs, you bet, whatever. Acknowledging God's presence with a moment of silence, I'll follow that with a set-aside prayer. Help me set aside everything I think I know about you, everything that I think I know about myself, everything that I think I know about my fellows, and everything I think I know about my own recovery and making amends and making a list for a much needed new experience in you, myself, and my fellows, and a new experience in my own recovery. Help me see the truth. Amen. All right, 1058 Threads of Recovery continues to offer virtual workshops 5 days a week. To be included in our weekly emails, send your request to threads1058@gmail.com. This will keep you up to date on our workshops. Our group follows the 12 traditions. We stick to our singleness of purpose. We ask that everyone act as if they are sitting in a live meeting. Please turn your camera on. If at all possible, we'd love to see your smiling face, but we're glad you're here either way. The 7 traditions states every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. The contributions help to cover the group's expenses, but the 7th tradition is more than simply paying for rent and other group expenses. It is both a privilege and a responsibility of individual groups and members to ensure that our organization at every level remains forever self-supporting and free of outside influences that might divert us from our primary purpose. The monetary amount of each contribution is secondary to the spiritual connection that joins us in unity with AA groups around the world. 7 tradition contributions can be made using Venmo to @Threads of Recovery -1058. Details are in the chat. Thank you, Annette. This is an open meeting. Open meetings are available to anyone interested in Alcoholics Anonymous's program of recovery from alcoholism. Non-alcoholics are welcome to attend open meetings as observers. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce today's speakers, Terry and Babe, and they are talking about steps 8 and 9 today, and it is recorded. If you want to go back to the start of the series, they've done a fantastic job just dropping nuggets of little wisdom. It's like, hey, I can do that. I mean, so great shares, and we're looking forward to today. Over to y'all.
Thank you, Debbie. My name is Terry. I'm an alcoholic. Babe, come on in, babe. Say hi. Say hey, kids, for us.
Hey, kids!
Oh, man. Terry, alcoholic, sobriety date, June 1st, 2019. I have a sponsor. I sponsor the men. Honor and privilege to be here, and we get to talk about a couple of steps that have changed my life, have permanently changed my life for the good. I guess the key thing that I'm going to talk about is how free do I want to be? And when after my 5th step, I remember I tried hiding my sex condom from my sponsor during my 5th step, right? And then I met with him that following week, and he said, hey, by the way, you tried hiding your sex inventory from me. And he's like, come here, give me a hug, right? And then we started going over steps 8 and 9. And when he introduced step 8, he's like, well, we're going to make a list of all the people we've harmed and we became willing to make amends to them all. Key word in that step is the word all, Terry. I want you to circle, highlight it, put little rainbows next to it, put little smiley faces next to it, put little rocket ships next to it, because you're going to make amends to every single one of your amends. And I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm willing to do this. Let's rock and roll, right? I'm riding high from this 5th step. Let's rock, right? And he's like, okay, we kept reading. It says, well, you've already made the list. I was like, oh, hold on. How did I make this list? You did it when you took inventory. And it felt like an axe went right through the middle of my chest. I lost my breath at that point, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to make amends to these people that I hated. I have to make amends to people that I've bumped heads with. I have to make amends to all these people, and a lot of fear cropped up. During this time, I get a call from my wife. This is literally right after my 5th step. And, we're going through a bit of divorce. I was having my lawyer attack her and vice versa. And she calls me up in the intention to, dead this heated argument or fight, and let's just get this divorce through. And I just did my fifth step, and you know who found out who is the a-hole? Me. And yet again, I have a new attitude, a new belief system, a new thinking towards my wife. And I didn't know what to do. And sponsorship is so key. And I recommend finding a tour guide or a sponsor, and certain type of traits that a sponsor should have is someone who has completed all their amends, who have made every single approach, who are sponsoring others, who are practicing the traditions, who are in the game, right? Because we're all on the same team, but who's really in the game? And there's some key questions to ask someone. So he helped me with that spot, and he said to kill her with kindness. That's what he told me. And when she called me, I killed her with kindness. That's what I did. And my wife and I, we just started talking. I'm in Minnesota, she's in New York, and we got back together, guys. She does it. She's in Al-Anon as well, Debbie. She does a great 10-step. Whenever I'm wrong, she promptly admits it. Whenever I'm wrong, she promptly admits it. But I came back to New York, and during that time, now I'm making my amends. And the first amendment I made was to my wife. And it went great. It was fantastic. And then I made another amend to my mom, and that went fantastic as well. And then I said, okay, I'm done. Right? I believe, what is it, 14, it says it's simple, but it's not easy, right? Anyone could do it. It's really simple, but it's not easy. Why? Because the alcoholic ego is fighting for its life. How free do I want to be? It's going to do everything in its power to make sure I don't make these amends so I can live in the future and live in the past, not live right here, right now in the land of milk and honey and the fourth dimension, right? It's not easy. A price has to be paid. That meant the destruction of self-centeredness. In the 1930s, the word destruction meant to take apart piece by piece by piece by piece. So I have to take apart piece by piece by piece self-centeredness with action and with God's aid, right? And sometimes we fall into a trap, guys. God kept me sober. God kept me sober. God kept me sober. God kept me sober. If that was true, the big would be one page and four words, God kept me sober. No, it says what we really have is a daily reprieve contingent upon the maintenance of. That should be a song. Maintenance of our spiritual condition. That means we got work to do, right? And when you do this work, you catch the grace of God, which solves your problem. And in my experience, it's been all my problems. And the major one was lack of power. Today, I've had an acquisition of power, right? I came into Alcoholics Anonymous powerless. Couldn't stay stopped, right? Couldn't stop drinking. I needed power in my life. You know, this is all about an acquisition of power, everyone. It's all about building a relationship with this power. That means a relationship is two-sided, meaning I do the work, and God works on me. Because when I looked at the steps on the wall, I'm like, how is this going to help me? I was making amends to these people. And I remember looking at the 9-step amends like, oh, I can't wait to make amends to my mom. I can't wait to make amends to these people. And then I find out I got to make amends to the people I hated. Time out. Let's think about that. How free do I want to be? Okay. The whole point of the I believe it's in the Little Red Book, which was one of the first early writings of the Step Study or Step Series or whatever. I forgot his name. I think it was whatever. I know Dr. Bob had a hand in helping the person, and I know that he said that the steps are just one giant amend broken into 12 parts, and is building back our relationship with God, and that's what we're doing here. And I was so fixated in this little narrative in my head, kept beating me up, don't do it. So I balked on the steps. And I was living free of alcohol. After the 5th step, it says the drink problem, right, might disappear. It did. I had liquor in my home. I'm back with my wife. Living life is good, right? Got a new job, right? Romantic with my life. Felt like I was on a second honeymoon with my wife, right? You know, it was amazing, right? And all of a sudden, I catch this resentment towards these guys. These are big book guys. And we go to these detox. So, you know, yet again, I was in Minnesota. The first thing to do when I got back was get a home group. Boom. Get a sponsor. Boom, right? Get a commitment at this home group. And one of those commitments is to go to the detox. So I go to this detox down in the Bronx, and we head over there, and they were all drug addicts there. So I might as well. I'm like, hey, that's part of my story. I do stick to singleness of purpose, but at that point, it felt right. So I told my history with addiction, and all of a sudden we're eating at this place called Carlos Restaurant, which, by the way, I love still going there. Their steak is awesome. And I'm sitting across from this guy eating the steak, and he leans over and he's like, you know what, Terry, I'm concerned you're not a real alcoholic. And I'm like, right, Christy? I'm like, what are you talking about? I identify with the allergy. When I drink, I get thirstier. I lose all control. I get accidentally drunk all the time. I end up in different states. What are you talking about? Huh. Bill's story is literally my story. It's just a dude from the 30s. I'm the same guy, right? I lost power, choice, and control and drink. That's me, right? Bedevilments, yeah. Dr. Bob's nightmare is literally my story. What are you talking about? And I remember walking away after that, pissed off, obviously. And I'm thinking, I'm like, on the drive home, I'm like, maybe he's right. Maybe he's right. Guys, the obsession to drink came back. Oh my God, I could taste tequila. I could taste whiskey in my mouth. I had liquor in my home. Remember, I told you that earlier. I had liquor here. We would serve it to our friends when they came over. I couldn't walk past it. I'm waking up every morning telling my wife, I just had a dream about getting drunk. I want to drink. I don't know how to stay stopped. I'm going to pick up. Right? She's like, did you call your sponsor? I'm like, of course I called my sponsor. What is he going to do? No human power can help me. all this AA lingo that I was doing in my first 6 months of recovery. And she's like, call him, because you're about to go to the bar. And literally, I get out of the car, going to my home group, and I'm literally at a traffic light, Debbie, looking to make a left to go to the bar or make a right to go to a meeting. That's where I was. I was at a turning point in my life, in sobriety. Yet again, I talked about miracles earlier. You know, here's a miracle. When the gift of desperation screams louder than the obsession. That's what happened. You know, I've had conscious contact with God. I've listened to him before. I called my sponsor in that moment. I told him what was going on. He's like, did you make your amends? I'm like, no. How'd you know I'm not making them? Yeah, some odd reason, these good sponsors, they know, right? He's like, maybe you need to make your amends, Terry. So I'm sitting at this traffic light, pull over to the side. And it was The Man We Hated. It's one of our amends that we make. There's about 8 altogether in chapters 76 to, I believe, 83. There's about 8 types of amends, which cover all types of amends. And The Man We Hated, which we got from our resentment inventory. And this person was a good friend of mine who we've fought physically, have butt heads physically, have had really bad outings together. And all I thought about was how we're going to fight. What is he going to say? How I'm going to respond to that? How I'm going to retaliate? How I might even drive to Connecticut to beat him up? This is all going through my mind. I'm expecting what's going to happen. I'm playing God in my narrative in my mind. This is what's going to happen with this amend. That's why I'm not going to do it. That's why I balked on amends. I was letting the little voice in my head, the little minions that feed me BS, and I bought the lie. That's why I balked. But yet again, how free do I want to be? Right? I remember my step 1 experience. I'm going to drink no matter what. If I picked up today, or if I picked up then, I'd be dead in 3 days. That's my step 1 experience. Right? If you truly want to understand step 1, go drink. Will beat the poop out of you to the point where you do the work or you drink again. Those are my 2 options. And I'm sitting in my car shaking like this, just looking at my phone, just shaking, praying for the willingness, 8-step prayer, praying for the willingness to make this call. Also, I'm praying for the willingness to do anything for victory over alcohol. And I'm praying for the willingness to do anything for a spiritual experience. I'm just praying this over and over and over and over again for 45 minutes, shaking, trembling, like Dr. Bob did on page 156. He trembled when he made amends. I did as well. Why was trembling? The alcoholic ego is about to die. It's fighting for its life. And I accidentally called him. I'm like, oh, snap. Don't do that. My friend picks up. He's like, hey, Terry, where have you been? I missed you. I love you. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. I had no idea people had loving compassion for me. Right then and there, I was rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence that I couldn't even dream. I found out literally the two most important dates in my life, and that it's not the date, my sobriety date. My sobriety date just measures how much time I have. I don't even look at sobriety dates anymore. It's more about quality time, right? Just measures how much time I have. It was the day I was born and the day I found out why. And the day I found out why is to fit myself to be a maximum service to God and the people around me. Let's rock and roll with these amends now. This is where the juice is at. And I start making all these different approaches. A lot of my sponsors were on there, previous sponsors. I remember making my approach to my sponsor, and he was a don't drink, go to meetings kind of guy, right? And I thought that he was killing me. He was just being helpful. And I was the one not doing the work. And I was also drinking at the same time with him, right? I went up to him and I made amends to him in that when I saw him at that meeting. I said, hey, man, I've gone through my life. I made an inventory. I looked at where my selfishness, my dishonesty, and my fear cropped up, and how I was running the show, how I was diluted. It always centered on me, and how I didn't care about what you said because all I cared about was me, and I lied to you. I stole your time from you. How can I make this right? And he said, you already did. You're right here, right now, sober. Right? I remember making an approach because it says we alcoholics owe money, right? It says, what does it say? Most alcoholics owe money. Whatever most should say all alcoholics owe money. I owed about $10,000 on my credit cards. I basically was on a gas station diet at that time, literally stealing from gas station stores so I could eat. And I owed 10 grand to my credit card. And I also owed, long story short, my father, he loved me from afar with money. And I didn't realize that until I got sober after we had a conversation about this, after I made his amends to him, that his father did the same thing with him. And his father, and so on and so forth. That was the culture that they came from. This is in France. He's from France. Hence the why my name is all weird. Theory. I like to say spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it, right? Thierry, that's how you actually spell it. Mo Money. Mo Money she's got 5 years coming out. Pew, 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 pew. Good to see you, Mo. And I remember, I went to see my dad in Leona, New Jersey, and with the intentions of giving back his credit card. Yet again, I owed him money, but I had his card with me, and I was using that because that was my safety net. It was my safety net for years. I was reliant upon my parents. And they gave that to me because that's how they loved me. And I remember sitting in the car with him, and I have the credit card. I'm like, hey, I'd like to make this right. I'd like to give you back this money. I also have some money that I could start giving you per month. And I pull out the credit card. Babe, I'm like this. Trying to hold myself back. I don't want to give it up. How free do you want to be? How free do you want to be? And I gave him the card. And he says, no, I want you to keep it. You never know. You might need it in a case of emergency, this and that. Like, he goes that route. I'm like, no, you don't understand. This means a lot to me that you have this and you take this and you allow me to pay you back as well per month. And he said, yeah. All of a sudden, I start making these calls, these approaches to credit card companies. Yet again, I owed 10 grand. And I called up the creditor. It could be the most ruthless creditor, they say. But if I don't pay the people back, I will drink again. That's one of our 9-step death threats that talks about, gives us a clear-cut warning. We might drink again. And I remember calling the credit card company, and I let them know. I'm like, hey, man, I'm in recovery. I've been slow to pay because of my drinking. I have some money, and I'd like to arrange whatever best type of deal that we could do so I could pay off this credit card. And they're like, hey, you know what? First off, we're going to cut the credit card. like, no, don't do it. Okay, do it, fine. And then this is the payments. And I made 4 payments of 10 grand in 6 months, and I paid it off. All of a sudden, I started to notice, because I was delivering pizzas at this time, and I had no money anyway. I was broke as a joke, but I'm no longer being fearful of being broke as a joke. I started to realize that. I was like, money is not the centerpiece of my life. Very paradoxical situation. You pay back money, so you're no longer in fear of money. It says fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. Fear of is internal. It's self-manufactured. God didn't create fear in my life. I did. And it's all under the delusion of selfishness and self-centeredness. I need money to live. Yet again, another belief system we talked about in our first step. And that started to trickle away. These are my first kind of rounds of amends, and I want to go to more current ones because I balked again. How free do I want to be, right? After making multiple different approaches, again, I started to notice 2 weeks into making these amends, like seriously going on a tear with these amends, intuitively making them, asking God, who should I make these amends to? Because I had an actual list. I didn't have note cards. I'm going to talk about the note cards in a little bit. I had a list with me, just kind of check, boom. And I started to notice that I wasn't thinking about drinking. I started to notice that I wasn't dreaming about it. I started to notice that I wasn't obsessing or fantasizing about it. It wasn't whispering in my ear anymore. The obsession was removed. In that moment, I suddenly realized that God was doing for me what I could never do for myself. And suddenly is a time frame. When is suddenly? Right here, right now. I started to enter the world of the spirit. How do I know if I've entered the world of the spirit, Patty? Am I experiencing the 9-step promises? Are they coming into fruition in my life? The 9-step promises are a bridge into step 10 and 11, right? And I remember I'm delivering pizzas. I love it. I just love amends stories. This just changed my life. I mean, yet again, what do these amends have to do with anything about drinking? Yet again, look at our 9-step promises. If you changed it when drinking and you put the promises, you get the full effect. When drinking, I was amazed before I was halfway through. When I was drinking, I was going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. When I was drinking, I suddenly realized that alcohol was doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. When I was drinking, I was useful because I wasn't in self-pity. When I was drinking, I had a new attitude, a new attitude and outlook upon life. I mean, those promises happened when drinking, but drinking was an illusion of those promises. It wasn't long lasting. When I start making these amends, I was doing God's work. I started to work this compassion muscle that I had no idea existed. I thought I was psychotic. Chrissy, I thought I was psychotic when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. There would be bad things happening all around the world, and I wouldn't have any empathy for anyone. I didn't understand. I'm sitting, I'm like, my God, that's terrible news, but I don't feel anything. I was like, am I psychotic? It's crazy. And I start making these amends. I start working this compassion muscle. I start to care about you. I become interested in my fellows rather than my own self-seeking needs. This is what happens. I'm doing the work and God is working on me. He's changing me internally. And I remember I'm delivering pizzas now, and I delivered to this funeral home, and long story short, I gave non-conference approved dry goods to this guy, and he died 2 days later. And one of our amends is some people cannot be seen. Usually people who have passed away, some people who we can't get in contact with. Yet again, we live in the world of Zoom, Facebook, Instagram. We could find people, right? Twitter, all that stuff. And different story nowadays, right? I mean, Dr. Dobb made his amends in one day. Why? Because he lived in the same damn town as all these people, right? This person passed away. So I went to actually deliver pizzas to the funeral that I last physically saw him. And I'm waiting for the guy to come downstairs and they come and sign the paperwork. And I remember him coming and I remember feeling spirit kind of pushing me towards the place where I last physically saw him. There's two places where you can see the caskets. And I went into that room and all of a sudden I just felt right to make the amends right there. Right? What we're doing in amends is we're repairing, right? We're making the wrong the right. And it was a check mark. I wrote a letter to this guy and that was it. It was check, done, didn't feel anything. But when in that moment, God directed me into that room and I made amends to my friend Mike. And I asked him, how can I make this right? And all I heard was a whisper says, just stay happy and stay sober. I'm getting goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I was rocketed into this fourth dimension right there in that moment. And the guy comes down to sign the paperwork and I'm just glowing. It's like, why are you glowing? You're in a funeral home, bro. What's going on with you? I was to know a new freedom and a new happiness. What's the definition of new? Something I've never experienced before. Right? I want to kind of stay current and yet again, rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed his path, and his path is not a straight line going up. It's zigzag, right? One surrender to the next, one surrender to the next, one surrender to the next. Why? Because there's a phenomenon here called the reconstruction of the ego. And my ego reconstructed itself in sobriety. I remember it was during COVID and I was on fire. I was doing intensive work with other alcoholics. I was demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. I was making these amends, rock and roll. I was doing remarkable things during this time. Not only did I survive COVID, I thrived in the beginning of COVID. First year, it was just on fire. I was getting introduced to all these amazing speakers. I don't want to mention them by name to keep anonymity, but you guys know what I'm talking about. And I'm get to hang out with these peeps and get out to go to these studies. And I was just loving it. And we were doing remarkable things during COVID. I did a third step prayer with 50 plus alcoholics and all of us abandoning ourselves utterly to God in that moment. Like it says, we thought well before taking this step. We would make sure to say that, making sure we were ready to at last abandon ourselves utterly to God, and we would have them wait a couple of minutes. Are you guys ready? And we would all get on our knees and we would shout it from the rooftop. Very powerful stuff. Then all of a sudden, I started to see myself being somewhat restless, irritable, and discontent. And this was because I had burden still. I had unfinished amends that I was not willing to do. You get the 10 step. We'll talk about the 10 step next week, which probably we'll talk about today. I need the 10 step in order to make my amends. It says we rigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. So I practice 10 and 11 so I can have an acquisition of power to make every single one of my amends. Keyword in the A step, all. I need an acquisition of power to make every one of my amends. Why? Because me on my own power will balk. And I have experiencing with balk. I did a whole hour talk on at some of these we balk. I could have gone longer than that. I had unfinished amends. And I started to realize that I was semi-restless, irritable, discontent. I started to notice that I was, started to see terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair. These cats were just galloping around me. Right? I started to bump heads with my wife every single day. She's on my inventory and, I can't stand her. It says, what is it called on 82? Where is it, 82? I'll just read it for you guys. It says, we feel the man. Where is it at? Where are you at? Where are you at? The alcoholic is like a tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. Hearts are broken, sweet relationships are dead, affections have been uprooted. Selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. We feel a man is unthinking, another words for Bill's calling us stupid or dumb, when he says sobriety is just enough. He's like the farmer who came out of the cyclone cell to find his home ruined. To his wife, he remarked, "Don't see anything the matter here, Mom. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing?" And I remember fighting with my wife every single day, thinking about divorce. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing? And I remember I had people who would call me and they want to, they want me to read the book with me. These are people that I work with. And, I would say, no, man, I'm unavailable at that time. I got some family event. Actually, I was lying. I just wanted to watch football. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing? I remember I was delivering pizzas and people would stiff me on a tip. Right. And I'm like, oh, okay. They put a credit card on here. Let me just put $5 on this baby. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing? You talk about love and tolerance is my code. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. It was more like gossip and slander is my code now, Tim. And I'm gossiping and slandering about remember I talked about last week about gossip. I'm gossiping about the gossipers. Now I'm the gossip peep all the time. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing? I remember I started studying the heck out of this book. Man, I was reading Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers. I read Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers 4 times. I read A Comes of Age. I read As Bill Sees It. I mean, I could keep going on. Why? Because I wanted to sound cool. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing? I wanted people to love me because I was Mr. AA speaker, Mr. Spiritual Man. Look at me. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing? But little do you know, slander and gossip is my code and lying is my new code. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing? Right. I remember I'll be on meetings on Zoom and I'll turn my camera off, go bloop, right? And there'll be some person fighting for their life. Like, you know what? I am fighting for my life and I have recovered. I've been given the power to help others, but I am turning the other way. I am turning to me. I could care less. And I'm put my legs up and I'm listening to a newcomer share about how crappy their day is. And I'm playing video games and I'm saying, ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing? Ain't it grand, right, Tim? Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing? What was the final straw? It was a snowstorm. We were supposed to get 2 feet of snow. And I got whiff of this on TV because I was watching the weather all the time. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing? I called out of work 5 days in advance, Debbie. 5 days in advance. Hey, I can't make it that day. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing? And I remember later on that day, the day that I actually called out of work, there's snow outside. Freaking out because there's snow outside. And I have to shovel my car, my truck, and my wife's car out, right? In constant fear and tension. And I'm trembling. I'm trembling. I'm shaking, looking at myself in the mirror. And I was not thinking drink solution, drink answer. I was thinking suicide solution, suicide answer. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing? I was at the jumping off place in recovery. Yet again, step 1 experience. Are you going to do this work or are you going to drink again, Terry? I decided to resubmit myself to the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I did steps 4 through 9 in one day. Newsflash, doesn't have to take you a year to do it. You can do it fast if your butt's on fire. I'll tell you that. And I remember part of my 5th step, it was like I couldn't get my wife pregnant. It was a fear of mine, right? I was like, I drank all this non-conference approved dry goods. I'm shot. I'm too old, blah, blah, blah. I make amends to my wife. And I remember I took a nap. It was a long day. Started at 6 a.m. Did my 5th step at 6 a.m. with my sponsor. And then made my amends in the afternoon. And then I took a nap. And then I wake up. And then I went to go use the bathroom, and I just heard my wife come out of the bathroom. And as I'm walking there, she's like, "Don't get out of the way." Like, what? I need to use the bathroom. Like, you just used the bathroom 5 minutes ago. What are you doing? I go back and I lay back down, and I, look at my phone, just blah blah blah. And she comes back and she gives me a letter and she tells me she's pregnant. On the same day that I recommitted myself to the steps. I was rocketed right back into the fourth dimension right then and there. And all of a sudden, let's rock and roll with these amends. I started to work the process of making all the amends through note cards. And by the way, I highly recommend that you get it. Probably one of the most spiritual thing I've ever done was making a list of all the people I've harmed. I've used the 8 types of amends. First type is our friends and our business acquaintances. Second one's the man we hated. Third one is most alcoholics owe money. Fourth one is a criminal offense. I love when I talk to people and like, I've never committed a crime. I'm like, oh, really? Have you ever read a red light? Have you ever ran a stop sign before? Okay, you've committed a crime. We'll get back to that. We could be cheating is another one. It could also be me robbing a bank with other people or other people involved. What is the other one? There's plenty we should do at home, which is probably the most difficult one. And the other one is people that cannot be seen. And I would sit with that with God and I would create this list. And God gave me a big list. He gave me a big one going way back to amends that I didn't finish as well. And all of a sudden, on this front of the note card, I put their name. I put, say, don't delay. I put, we asked for God for strength and direction to do the right thing. And we also said to be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile or scraping. How do I remember that? Because I wrote it for every damn one of my amends. How do I memorize that? Because I write each one for each amend. Right? How free do I want to be? My God, that was probably the most spiritual thing. You know how many times I've walked away from writing the note cards? I was like, screw this, man. Why don't I just copy and paste it? Sponsor was like, how free do you want to be? And you start to change when you write this 8th step, right? You get this process of of forgiveness in your heart, and also this process of where you're going into amends, where you're going to listen. A lot of transformation happens in the 8th step. We just don't know it. And I'm writing these note cards. And one of the big ones that I had from my previous inventory was that how much time do I have? Oh, okay, I'm running out of time. One of my amends that I did not want to do, which was a burden on me, was that long story short, I worked at a corporation, and it was a fitness industry, and I pretended to get hurt, and so I could collect workers' compensation. So, and I did it with someone who was also a coworker of mine, who was also one of my running mates. So he knew the deal he was getting involved in. And he actually was the person who witnessed me just in case, but nothing happened. I pretended, and I collected $50,000 from that. And I did not want to pay that back. That was a burden that I held on to me. No wonder why I went down that path of being suicidal in recovery, because I didn't want to make that amend. Right. And I had a really good sponsorship at this time. And it was, Terry, you need to practice the disciplines of 10 and 11 while you make your amends. Intuitively make your amends, take it with note cards. So in the morning, I'll look at my note cards, and whatever jump out of me, I'm like, okay, I go intuitively make these amends. Every single one. And if I have fear about it, I have step 10. So if fear crops up, what do? Ask God to remove it. Step 10. If that doesn't work, I'm going to go discuss it with Babe. Hey, Babe, I got a fear about making this amend. Babe's going to like, shut the F up, Terry, go make the amend. Right? And I go make the amend. Or that doesn't work, I go turn my thoughts to someone I can help. What about those other alcoholics? What about my other family members? What about my dad? What about my mom? What about my wife? What about my son? Just turn, because God gave me the power to turn my thoughts to someone I can help. When I'm turning, I'm no longer in the middle of this narrative in my head about this fear and the expectation of what this amendment is, how it's going to go. I need an acquisition of power so I can make every single one of my amends. I can't do it without God's aid. That's it, period. So I go through that amend process. I remember I called up my sponsor and said, you know what, man, I'm unwilling to make this amend. He's like, you need to pray and you need to sit with that unwillingness. And that's what I did. And yet again, God will show you the pain. And yet again, I had little note cards that were, color coded. And the one that was color coded was that one. It would always pop up out of nowhere for some odd reason. Go pay back that money, Terry. So yet again, how free do I want to be? I remember I talked to my sponsor about it. I'm like, look, I could implicate someone else. And there's clear-cut directions. If you were going to potentially implicate someone else, you need to ask for the consent to make this amend, right? Talk to God, consult with other people, right? That's all instructions in our book. And that's what I did. And I asked him, hey, man, I'm looking to make this amend. I'm willing to go to jail, right? And then he's like, you ain't bringing me to jail, bro. That's what he said. You ain't doing that. And I'm like, oh, snap. Okay. I go back to my sponsor. I'm like, this is what he said. He's like, well, why don't you, donate that 50K to a charitable foundation? So we found the Wounded Warrior Project. And the Wounded Warrior Project, I gave him a call on that day and told him why I'm making this donation. I just want to give back. And then they said, okay, how much do you want to give per month? And we got to the idea of paying $85 a month. And he said, can I take your credit card information? I'm like, sure, hold on 1 second. Hold on, I gotta go. I hung up the phone on him. How free do you want to be? 3 days later go by, I'm in pain. And I felt that going up towards, just like that jumping off place, just like I was going back to it. I asked God, just please help me do this. I'm not in charge of the results. I'm in charge of the effort when I make amends. I'm responsible for not the outcome, the effort. So I called them back up. I gave them my credit card shaking again. And I put it on auto payments for the next 49 years. And they said, Terry, would you like a free blanket? I was like, no, you're good. I don't need a free blanket. I'm just happy to give back to these people. How free do you want to be? And all of a sudden, I start making every single one of my approaches with these note cards, and I got down to none. How do I say I finished my amends? Means I made every single approach. That's what I say when I say I've completed my amends. And I have lived on a different level of freedom today. I'm beyond words, and the description of how I feel right now, especially talking about this, has changed my life. There's so many different other amends that I could talk of time. I see I only have 1 minute left. But yet again, this is some very powerful stuff. This is where the stuff happens, man. This is where God dances between the raindrops, right? He does. This is where I start working this compassion muscle that I had no idea, and I start to care about you. And I bring that into my 12-step work, and I start to care about other people. It says life will take on new meaning in our 12-step. What does that mean? I'm no longer thinking about me. 12-step says to watch people recover. I watch God do work on people. I listened to a 5th step last night for 7 hours, 7 straight hours. And he's like, I'm sorry, we still have an hour and a half to go. We have to do his conduct inventory tonight. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry that, that I'm making you do this. I'm like, dude, you don't have to be sorry. I know this is a life or death errand. I did the same thing. Someone took away their time to help me, and I'm doing the time to help you. What's the most precious thing you could give to someone, Tim? It's your time. You're never going to get that back. But when I give, I get. When I give, I get. I get choked up with so much gratitude today. I get choked up, just chokes me. I got to give it away and stop choking on it. When I give it away, I get back. When I do the work, God works on me. And that's why today I'm very confident to say that June 1st, 2019 is my permanent sobriety. I will do whatever it takes. How free do I want to be? So yet again, the spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. I'm going to pass it over to Babe, and we'll talk about 10 and 11 next week. Thank you.
Hey, kids, Babe, alcoholic. And Amazing. I love this. Your hands-on direct approach to these steps was just the way it's written in the book. But Bill learned a hell of a lot in the 15 years from the time he wrote the book to the time he wrote the 12 and 12. It's all in the book. Our constant thought is alcoholics, our very lives as problem drinkers depend on constant thought of others and how we may help them meet their needs. Simple but not easy. A price has to be paid. What is the price? The destruction of self. Selfishness, self-centeredness is the root of my problem. We must be rid of this or it kills us. So what do you want? How free do you want to be? That's a little selfish. I want to just be joyous, happy, and free. We dangle out that little tease, you know. What do you really, really want? Tell me what you want, what you really, really want. I just want to put the plug in the jug. So I start people out. Your goal is to live an altruistic life. Your goal is to get out of the way, let God transform you so you can be a maximum service to God and your fellows. It ain't about getting free. It ain't about getting back in the big bed. Especially it ain't about getting the border crossing on the big bed. These are all things that happen. And why do we take that fourth step? Why do we take the third step? So I can draw close to God and perform his work well. What do I find in the fourth step? What do we, we look at these things. What is blocking me off from being of maximum service to God and my fellows? My resentments, my fears, those selfish relationships. Who else was hurt? It says in the fourth step that, even then we're asked, are you ready? Are you okay making amends to these people? Well, if it'll get me back in the big bed or keep my job, why wouldn't I? And that isn't why we do it. And I think that's what Bill learned in 6. And Terry's right. It says we found this list when we did our 4th step. But boy, did that sell the 8th and 9th step short. It ain't dragging out your 4th step and just copying the names down. I think we're supposed to take our time in step 6. We're supposed to learn how to start cooperating with God. What would you have me be, God? What would you have me do? We got a little practice in that in the fear inventory. And what does it say in the 12 and 12 in the 5th step? That it's the beginning of our end of isolation, that desperate loneliness that we come in. And it says a healing tranquility begins to take place. That's in step 5. Whoa. Hold on. Why do so many people feel the nearness of their creator? Because they feel that God has forgiven them and they don't have to have any more secrets from at least that goofball they're talking to. And that sense of ease and comfort happens in step 5. I love people that say I couldn't do the 8th, the 9th step until I could learn to forgive myself. That's a little selfish. And what does it say I'm supposed to do? Align my will, aim toward the perfection which is of God. Look, where am I prideful, lustful, envious, greedy, gluttonous, slothful? How can I be a little bit better at that? Learn some actual humility in step 7. Actually try to do this stuff. And then ask God, give me strength as I go out from here. And I love in the 12 and 12, and step 8 is not step 9. Terry emphasized over and over the word all. I cringe when somebody says, oh, my sponsor says I don't have to make that amends. Whereas then that one is excluded in all. You haven't made the amends at step 8. This is, and I love in the 12 and 12 where Bill says restitution, of course, is of ultimate importance. I don't know. I misquote the book. Any of you that know these books better than I do can tell me where I'm quoting it incorrectly. But of equal importance is what I learn about me. Where do I still hurt people? Where have I hurt people? And he took many different ways that we use to avoid even putting it on the list. Why not put it on the list? Well, maybe I didn't really hurt them. Cool, make the amends anyway. Well, what was it going to do if I didn't hurt you and I told you I wasn't a very good friend? I'd like to make it better. And you could say, you've always been a good friend. And I'd say, well, thank you, but I'd like to make it better. It's not about me getting free. It's about me healing people. I love in Richard Rohr in step 8. This is where he says why we do it. When we move into higher states of love and transformation, you do not jump over earlier stages. We must go back and rectify the earlier wrongs, or there will be no healing or open future for you or for those you have hurt. We both heal. And that's the whole point of this. At the beginning of the 12 and 12, it says we're actually trying to build the best possible relation with everybody. I'm trying to learn to be a loving, caring, tolerant child of God, selflessly. It's not about me. It's all about you. I learned through this process that I always lived my life backwards. What's in it for me? Maybe what's in it for you, and God can go out and create universes or whatever it is that he thinks he ought to be doing. That's how I lived my life. And through recovery, what we learn is that that's asked backwards. I'm supposed to be asked living my life with hand in hand with God, looking up, the cross thing, the vertical is where I detach from the worldly clamors, the petty pace of day to day, if you want to do Shakespeare. And so we turn the big book says our head's supposed to be in the cloud with God, but our feet are on the ground because that's where the people are. And the people are there when we spread our arms, embrace God's kids. More important than me, huh? One order, I can't go through with. I love Thierry talked about all the ways we tend to balk. Well, this sucks. Yeah, but it's what we need. Some of that medicine doesn't taste real good, but we get healed. So we look at that and we actually write them all down. I like the index cards. I've never done it, nor have I asked anyone to do it. But it's just a little sheet that has now, later, maybe, never. And yeah, Mo will tell you, you don't get to do the nevers very long when we talk about this. Never. And where do we learn to say never? Way back in step 7. This I will never do. And what we learn to say is, God, with your help, I will do this. This is persistence. This is one stitch at a time. This is loving God and everybody 1 minute at a time. Sometimes they aren't real pretty. Sometimes the situation sucks. But am I thinking of you and others first? Or am I looking for what I'm going to get out of it? I love it. So many meetings start with the 9th step promises, like they're participation trophies. And they are not. They're a list of selflessness. What? And so step 8, and I love at the end of the step 8 in the 12 and 12, because it says it in step 5, where we feel that feeling of isolation begins to disappear in 5. Then we draw close to God and try to get better, aim toward the perfection which is of God, knowing we're never going to get there. And then the humility that we learn. Step 8 teaches more and more humility. I am willing to stick my neck out to heal you. And yeah, and Thierry talked about Harry Thibault, the ego tends to grow back. But Henri Nouwen says that because we have known so much pain, we become wounded healers. And real healers are wounded healers. We have been through the agony. We've been through the pain, the heartbreak, the sorrow. And our job in step 9 is to open the door and let somebody else heal. It's not what I get out of this. And so when ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing? We think a man is unthinking. That's just being selfish. Well, I'm happy. I got my job back. Life is pretty good. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing? And that is unthinking. What's it unthinking of? It's unthinking of you. Ain't it grand, Ma? Yeah, Ma, go about your business. I'm happy with me. And you ought to be happy too, because I'm sober now. A little selfish there, ain't it? Or as Bill says, a little vain of us. When I think it's what's in it for me, and I do, trust me, I'm still human, but I have at the core what's in it for us. Me, you, and God in this circle and triangle of life all together. That's where the freedom comes. I get to be me, warts and all. I don't get to be a saint. I don't get to be a pathetic, endless sinner. I don't get to be totally selfless. I get to live a life. And that's this life that's beyond our wildest dreams. So the whole 8-step, and that's why, and like I said, in step 8, we haven't even made a goddamn amend. We're just looking at that. The trouble with index cards and even discussing it with a sponsor or however you do it, I found out through the years, most of the time, we don't really even know how or if we hurt people. I love in there, yeah, I punched your teeth out and I'll buy you new false teeth. But the guy, this is a true story too, and I can't find the guy. This happened February 17th, 1968. So it's been a couple of days. I popped this guy in the mouth and he went down and he came up pulling teeth out of his face. Now, holy cats, that never happened before. And then his wife came out and she's screaming and crying. This was right in the street. And so, I said, geez, buddy, I'll buy you false teeth. It was all his fault. He was chasing me all through town right on my bumper till I finally stopped and got out of the car and decked the dude. But what I found out later, his wife said because of that fight, she had a miscarriage. So is it me buying a guy false teeth? How could that possibly make that situation right? We don't know how we hurt people. The big, that's why I'm not in, get out and make amends quickly, sure. But give it a little thought. But years down the road, I asked my wife, what is the worst thing I ever did to you? And she said, you would make me feel small and stupid and insignificant. And oh my God, how can I make that right? She said, you already have. Little more than ain't a grand, the wind stopped blowing. I got to show her that she was the most valuable person in my life. Right now, there are 24 other people besides me, and every one of you is the most valuable person in my life. When I'm talking to you, I want you to think that you are the most important person in the world. Right now, we 25 people, I don't know if my car's out there in the driveway. I don't know if the rest of the world may have ended out there. All I know is I got a whole bunch of black little squares of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 faces that I get to see. Right now, we might be the only people in the world. Are we there for each other? You guys are patient enough to stick around and listen to an idiot like me talk. God bless you. But we should make every single person that we come in contact feel that they are a child of God, and at least I love you. And then people that coming into Alcoholics Anonymous, Terry got there, when we see the light come on in somebody's eyes, that they aren't real attractive people. An alcoholic in his cups is an unlovely sight. They're the ones that need the hand on the back to take their hand, show them that there's a God, show them that there's hope for them. Oh, good. What's in it for me? I want that. Good. You learn how to get rid of yourself. There's nothing in it for you, buddy. And with the nothing in it for me is every single thing that I ever hoped for, prayed for, dreamed of. Isn't that amazing? What is that but a miracle? And we have ceased fighting everything or everyone. We are placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. The loving hand of God. What are the thoughts? 2 thoughts must go with us constantly, it says. The first one is the one that we tend to forget. The second one is, if it be your will, God, let me find a girl. Let me win the lotto. Let me fill in the blank. If it be your will, that's our get out of sin free card. If it be your will, God. But what we're supposed to open that thought with is, how can I best serve you, God? Your will, not mine, be done. That's a whole different angle and outlook on this stuff. And that says this thought must go with us constantly. I'm working on the constantly. But thank God that says we are not saints. Nobody has been able to practice this perfectly. And with the imperfection comes the joy of living. I like sometimes when I'm not feeling, butterflies and free pizza. I like what the sorrow is as rewarding as the joy. That's how this whole thing is a paradox. But how is it that through our greatest sorrow comes our greatest gratitude? Through our greatest heartbreak comes our greatest love. That makes absolutely no sense. Because who wants heartbreak? Who wants sorrow? But it doesn't happen to me. It happens. And when I draw close to God, I detach and look up. And then once I've been given this new freedom, that's with Kate's, when Kate going through her cancer and death. And God told me in my world, somebody saying, this is the best day of my life. I fell in love. We're having a baby. And from that moment on, I quit having selfish days or having bad days. There are dark periods of our soul, but what a blessing. So I am not saying my wife's suffering and slow, agonizing death from cancer was a blessing, but the lesson was one of the greatest blessings in my life. I could run around like some people, go get drunk, run life bitter, run through life lonely. Or I can reach out and take somebody else's hand, turn this, what seems like a bad day, into I'm just being selfish. Where do we learn that? In step 8. When I hurt these people, I'm just being selfish. I love in step 9 in the big book, they tell us, reminding ourselves we're willing to go to any length to get over alcohol. 2 pages later, it says, reminding ourselves that we're trying to have a spiritual experience. Wait a second. You just moved the bar there, God. I just want to get over drinking. And now you're telling me I have to have the spiritual awakening, the spiritual experience, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe, loving all his kids. Damn, I just wanted to quit drinking. And by the time you get to step 9, I hope you're past just wanting to quit drinking. And that's why we was, and I like this, Terry, this, I'm going to have to start calling him step 9. What does it say? What is step 9's real purpose? To fit ourselves to be a maximum service to God and our fellows. Where in the world did that come from? I just want to be joyous, happy, and free. No, the 9th step is the weightlifting program. It's the gym. It's the track. It's the hike up the mountain. To be of maximum service to God and all of you. And then those 9th step promises take on a whole new meaning. It's not what's in me. Well, yeah, of course I want to know a new freedom and a new happiness. You know what the new freedom and new happiness is? That I matter very little and you matter a lot. Fear of people. How can I be afraid of people when I'm now treating you as a brother? That I've opened the door for you to heal. You don't have to walk through it, I clean up my side of the street. That's max of selfishness. I like the idea that the approach that Terry talked about is the opening of the door, offering the olive branch. If they choose to take it, that's up to them. So fear of people and economic insecurity. And boy, when we're making those amends, that is how we outgrow the fear of people. What if he shoots me? Well, I hope they bury me quick, or I hope he kills me quick. I don't want to live crippled, But those first big amends where you're knocking on the door. Oh my God, that is fear of people. Mostly fear that I'm going to be hurt, but that's the selfish angle of it. But also the fear that I might hurt them. When do I do it? God will tell us when. God will tell us how. I don't have to figure out how I hurt you. And I sure as heck don't have to relive the horrid details. I don't have to tell you what happened. You were there. You know, yeah, remember that time I punched out your teeth, buddy? You know, I'm pretty sure he remembers. And the amend doesn't have to be in one sitting. Somebody that, you know, what does it say in the fifth step? We can look the world in the eye. And I heard some woman that she was supposed to be all recovered. And she said, oh my God, I saw this guy from my past in the grocery store and I had to scurry down another aisle. If you're living in step 9, you will take advantage of it and say, boy, I haven't seen you in a long time. Are you okay? You don't have to do the whole full-blown amend in one sitting. You don't have to do like Dr. Bob and drive around all night. And I love that. He did all those amends that night. I wonder how he made amends to Ann and Bill when they were worried sick that he was gone back to Atlanta and drunk again. What does it say in the 8th step? We hurt people not only physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. That what I told you about Kate. I crushed that woman's spirit. That doesn't usually make it on people's 9th step things. How did I crush your spirit? Where was I sarcastic? How did I hurt people's feelings? That's why the list is never done, which is why they give us the 10th step. But think about all the ways you stepped on people's toes. Well, you know, I heard someone, his kid had drawn a beautiful picture of a tree, and look at Daddy, I made this picture of a tree. And the guy says, hey, Billy, trees aren't purple. That can be a crushing of a spirit, or something as simple as that. We run around stepping on the toes of our fellows. But if I'm thinking of you first, I'll say, that what a beautiful tree. God can't even make a tree that color. You know, maybe God will listen. Maybe there will be purple trees someday, Johnny. How come my picture of mommy's got 7 fingers? Because she hits me. No, feels like there must be 7 of them. Mommy could use 7 fingers because she works so hard. Putting somebody else first is what this is all about. That's why to watch the light come on in somebody's eyes is the heart and soul of this program. To be there for one of God's kids is the heart and soul of this life that's beyond our wildest dreams. So, yeah, we all want to be free, but the freedom comes when we don't deserve it. We become less interested in our little plans and designs. The feeling of uselessness, self-pity will slip away. So you can call the 9th step promises either the 9th step checklist, or if you really want to look at it deeper, where are each of these things geared toward my practicing a selfless life? Putting God first, you second, and I'm just there to chop wood and carry water. So that's enough out of me.
Beautiful job, babe. Thank you. Would you like to take us out with a prayer or reading of your choice?
Sure. Well, I personally like the third step prayer because it tells us what we're supposed to be doing. God, I offer myself to you. Build with me and do with me as you will. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do your will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of your power, your love, your way of life. May I do your will always.
Yay, thank you so much. Great job.